Hello and welcome to the Red Robin pre-season mini-pod with me, Chris Johnson, and of course, we are powered by 𝓡𝓫𝓫𝓷𝓼 Chartered Accountant and Budget Ties Auto Centre. The mini-pod will give you an overview of all the latest goings on at Hull Kingston Rovers in the build-up to our first Super League campaign under Willie Peters, with us also casting an eye over Rugby League in general and the Rugby League World Cup. Each mini-pod will see me joined by a member of the Red Robin podcast fans panel, with our first panel member to join me being Graham Turner. How are we doing, Graham? You okay, mate?
I'm very well, thanks, Chris. Yeah, fantastic to be here on this very first mini-pod. What an honour.
Yeah, obviously no stranger to the podcast, but you've made a super effort joining us live from Spain. So I was Spanish Hull Kingston Rovers correspondent. I appreciate you taking the time to join us. And of course, it's Willie Peters' first proper week in the job. He's been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, hasn't he? I mean, he must have been the busiest man in the world doing his full-time job in Newcastle, whilst also, getting ahead of the game at Hull Kingston Rovers. But he looks like he's got his feet under the table now. And, if you read the sound bites, the interviews, etc., he's saying all the right things, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, and I think we've known for a good few months now. I think it was about May that the news broke that Peters was coming. So we've known he's coming, and we've seen over that time where he's been with Newcastle that he's been doing his homework. He's been in contact with Maguire, with the players, etc., setting out his stall early, which I think is hopefully will stand him in good stead now that he's actually here. And a lot of that background work that he would have ordinarily needed to do on these players and start his recruitment has already been done to an extent. And those can be sometimes quite hard yards for new coaches coming across and coming over. So to have that in the bag already, I think, is a really positive. So now when it gets to the stage we're at now of approaching pre-season in a couple of weeks, he's done all that. He doesn't need to get to know the club itself. He doesn't need to know the area. He doesn't need to know the play. He can just hit the ground running with a really strong, what I hope is a really strong pre-season for everybody. Set out the ground rules for him, what he expects of the players, what the players can expect of him, our season ambitions, etc. So I'm really positive that we're in a really good, strong place now with the recruitment done. Seems to be a good breed of player that is focused on, and like you said, the sound bites that have come out so far, yes, are sound bites and the what fans want to hear effectively. But it does, when you sort of read into the detail, it does sound like he's very thorough, and what he's done, he's got a good, clear plan that he wants to work to, and that he's expecting everybody to jump on board. And if not, well, I think if you probably read the same article that I did, he sort of said that we don't want those type of players if they're not on board with what we do.
Yeah, and one of the real positives for me is that he's come over with his family. He's obviously here on a 3-year contract. He's come here, to really buy into the project, what's been set for him, and his family being here is going to play a huge role in helping him settle down. And we've seen, in the past where coaches have come over on their own and they've struggled to settle in because they don't have that release maybe away from rugby league. But again, when the players come back to training, the schedule to come back on the 24th of October. Of course, that's the players who are not involved in the Rugby League World Cup. So there's going to be a healthy number of players back on the 24th. They're not really going to be strangers to him, are they? Because he spoke to probably every member of the squad already, especially our new signings. And it's really important, isn't it, that we get the players in early, especially our overseas recruits, and we get into training early, because we've seen far too often in the past where we've had a bit of a disjointed pre-season because our imports have come over late. They've not been able to get to know the new players that they're joining, and they've not been able to get into that training regime. But they're going to be doing it early, 24th of October. It's an early start to pre-season.
It is, and I think you spot on there, because we've had it in the past where even players living in this country coming across to join us at East Hull didn't relocate and travelled in significant distances and found that a challenge without the families. So I think the point about Willie Peters coming and embedding himself into the community with his family is a really strong positive sign that he's here to stay. For that, hopefully that 3-year period initially, and beyond if things go well. But without that family, you haven't got that direct, as you say, that release away from rugby when you do need that bit of downtime, when you do need that bit of normality in your life. Your family can bring you that. So it just keeps you grounded, even if it's just a trip to the park or a trip to the shops or whatever. It's just a bit away from the pressure of the results of rugby league for a while. So I think that's a really positive. And again, the players having them all together, or as many of them together as possible, it will help. He's talked very well about the sort of resilience that he's looking to create, and with only half a squad knocking around, it's very hard to do that, and people coming in dribs and drabs, it's going to be very difficult to do that. So I think with the vast majority of the squad over here early doors from day one, that's going to really help that position, and everybody's going to be at the same stage of pre-season fitness testing, etc. And that those bonds can start to be formed, and that resilience can start to be created. Whereas if you've got 3/4 of the squad here and then you're just parachuting people and drip feeding them in, they haven't experienced all that togetherness that there's been in pre-season, which is where a lot of, the vast majority of work for the season is done. You don't necessarily get too much fitter and stronger during the season. That's just a case of managing your fitness levels, and it's this work and this time now that I think is really important. This sort of 8-12 week block, whatever they're going to do, leading up to February, then that for me is where some of the real groundwork is done for the season, and that effectively could determine how well or not your season may go.
Yeah, and it's been interesting reading about his plans for pre-season. One of the elements of the pre-season is that the Robins are going to Tenerife on a 10-day warm weather camp. This was planned prior to Willie Peters taking the job, but he's definitely in favour of it, and I think he's relishing the chance to get some sun on the backs and unite and knit that bond, that group of players together. But he's also said about there'll be no breaks in training during winter. If the weather's tough and it's snowing, it's raining out there, then players will be in training. There's no breaks for them. And, in one respect, he's coming across very authoritarian. When you listen to the sound bites, he's very much telling this is what we're going to lay out. But I think he's definitely got a softer side to him. And you can tell that by, our new signings, when they comment on what influence Willie Peters has had on them, that he seems to be someone who's commanding the respect of the players straight away. And what's really impressive for me is the coaching group that we've got now. So if you look at Danny Maguire, Brett Delaney, Dave Hodgson, Willie Peters, it's a really strong group of coaches there. And Danny Maguire's going to have a huge role to play. He knows this group inside out now, and he's fully on board with it. He's committed to being the assistant. When he signed that 3-year contract, for me, that was a real statement of intent for him, that he's not looking for a head coach role, and he's committed to the club and he's committed to the assistant role. And I think that group of coaches is a real plus for us going forward. Yeah,
there's a lot of stability there with Maguire and Hodgson in there, in terms of they've been knocking around for a good few years now. They know the playing group inside out, and they've got the respect of that playing group, I think. And the late addition last season of Delaney, I think, hopefully will add some strength to that coaching group as well. I think the trip to Tenerife will be good. I can vouch for the bit of winter sun on your back. Currently sat here in Spain and it's 21 degrees and bright sunshine. So yeah, I'll definitely vouch for that. And I'm not sure how much snow they've had in Tenerife lately, but I can't imagine it being too much. But yeah, that again, just a trip away, just to really focus the mind on the goals for the season. You've seen it, I guess, through football. You see it, but it's more of a commercial aspect, where the trips to the Far East and the Americas and the like. But certainly for this, I think a trip to Tenerife for 10 days certainly beats Brid Beach when they went there a few years ago, and it was lashing down. But yeah, I think that work that they can do collectively and sort of almost cocoon themselves away from everything for a really intense, solid block of training, really get to know each other, really get to set the tone and the goals for the season. And I think I sort of picked up on the fact that Hodgson's got a bit more of a dual role, not just with the first team, but with the reserve grade as well, which again, I think is a good move in terms of having a direct link for Willie Peters to the reserve grade with David Hodgson, and being able to, comment firsthand on those players that are looking to push up or that have been pushed down from the first team and how they're actually performing, etc. So I think that's a good way of him keeping an eye on all players. You know, he's got a good quality squad there. There's not everybody going to be playing in the 17 jerseys on a match day. So some people are going to be naturally disappointed, but they need to be kept fresh, kept hungry, and through the reses, you'd like to think that there's an opportunity to do that. And with Hodgson there lending a hand as well and keeping an eye on it, you would expect that if people were deserving of places, then you'd be able to sort of fire up the line and, you know, recommend to Peters that this player was ready for back into the first team fold, or likewise some of the younger players that they can push forward as well.
Yeah, definitely. What was that pre-season? I think it was Chris Chester where he made him go. There was firefighters at an airport, then they went gardening, and I'm sure it was under Chris Chester that I think he was doing it to try and make the players realise, you know, what normal jobs people are doing, and try and there's groups, weren't they, going off to, I think there was airport firefighters, I think there was a gardening group, I think there was another, yeah. So yeah, I mean, but also it shows the investment by the club, doesn't it? I mean, a 10-day camp in Tenerife isn't cheap. It's gonna, so you know, the club are once again putting in the hand in the pocket to back the coach. I know it wasn't Willie Peters who planned this, but you know, it's another statement of intent for me that they are really taking, especially next season, seriously. One player who's come in since we did our end of season review is Sam Luckley, promising forward. If you listened and read to the comments from Salford fans when the club announced his signing and he was departing the Red Devils, sad to see him go. You know, I think we've got a really good prospect, and of course we're going to get the opportunity to see him on Saturday when Scotland take on England B. Kane Lynette going to be lining up for Scotland as well, and they'll be taking on Jez Litton and Mikey Lewis. But Sam Luckley, another promising, you know, he's not the finished article by any means, but another promising signing for the Robins.
Yeah, I read those comments as well from the Salford fans that the majority were very disappointed that he'd left, and they felt that they had a prospect on their hands and he could have gone on to do good things with them. But again, does that show where we're at in terms of a club and the standing that we have? If, you know, Salford have been playing well this season, obviously making playoffs, grand final appearances, etc., over the last few years, does that put us in a good light of the nature of standing of us as a club if it's prepared to leave you know, what was a good Salford side last season to join us? Is it more about the fact that he's been promised certain things, as in a career path that's been laid out for him by Willie Peters? He certainly fits that bill of type of player that has been actively recruiting over the last 4 or 5 months. And yeah, again, like you say, a prospect that needs looking after, like quite a few in the squad now. But given half a chance, I think first time really took notice of him was at Magic Weekend with his Alan Shearer celebration. So let's hope for a few of those type of celebrations in the red and white next season. Yeah,
plenty more sound bites to come from Willie Peters, no doubt. I know Joe Appley has done a great job covering his first week at the club, so be interesting to see what else comes out from there. We've also had the announcement of a new kit, although they've also announced that all the new kits have been nicked. If anyone's not seen that, our kit suppliers have had a robbery, and Hull Kingston Rovers, Leeds Rhinos, Huddersfield Giants, and I think Castleford Tigers are all affected because they've had a load of new merchandise nicked. So if you see someone walking down Oldness Road and they've got the new shirt on, you can pretty much guess where it's come from, because the shirts weren't supposed to be with us until December. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if we do spot anyone wearing one. You think it, Graham? It's a bit of a limited market, isn't it, when you start nicking rugby league gear from where you can sell it? I can't imagine it going overseas and being sold to the Asian market or anywhere else.
Yeah, it's not a very lucrative market, is it really? It's only got a limited shelf life and a limited audience to aim for there. So not quite sure how that's happened. I'm sure there's a few red faces knocking around, but yeah, like you say, it's one of them where from a club perspective, it's really disappointing, because there's obviously fans, hard-earned cash paying for those shirts that some might be disappointed they're not going to get them on the date of issue because of unfortunately somebody or some people have decided to do a job on the factory and take them for themselves. So
yeah, and the thing as well is, mate, it's money out the club, innit? If someone's buying a knockoff one, they're not buying the one from the club, so the money's not going to the club, and it's finances are tight. The club needs the money to invest in blah blah. But anyway, that's not too with us. Anyway, so the kit, if you watch it, if you're listening to it on the podcast, I'm just putting it on screen now. If you're watching it on YouTube, you can see it in all its glory. A lot of positive reaction to this shirt. It's mainly red front with white sleeves, a white trim collar, V-neck collar. It looks pretty smart. I'm not overawed by it, Graham. I think it's all right. I'm maybe a bit more of a Rovers traditionalist. I like the predominantly white kits with red bands and them kind of shirts. But obviously, when the club rebranded with the going to predominantly Hull KR, bringing in the change of the badge, red is the predominant colour now for the club, and you can understand why they're going down this route with the new kit.
Yeah, like you, I'm a bit of a traditionalist as well. And when I first saw it, I was a little bit unsure as to whether it sort of grabbed my attention or not. And if I'm honest, I thought it looked a lot like more of a training kit than a match play shirt. But I think it's grown on me a little bit. Like you say, the predominantly red is part of the rebranding exercise, etc. And I'm sure, like we always do, the fans will buy into it. Hopefully from the club shop and not down Holness Road. From a man
Walton Street Market, he'll be doing a
rock. We better check Walton Street Market this Sunday or whenever it's on. See what's going around there. But yeah, I think it like with all clubs nowadays, the commercial income generated from shirt sales, merchandise, etc., is huge to underpinning some of the backroom work that goes on with the club. It's it might only be a T-shirt, but it will contribute towards something that goes on within the club that has a cost attached to it. So I encourage all fans to not buy the knockoff stuff if they get offered it, and go through the official club routes. But yeah, I think the shirt itself it's red and white, and there's not a right lot you can do with them. I don't think nowadays. We've had so many iterations over the years, as of all clubs, that it's very hard to come up with something new. I think you'll always get, like we both said there, we're quite traditional in our views, but I'm sure as the season goes on and if it brings us good luck in terms of results, then I don't think we'll mind it whatsoever.
No, 100%. And, if you saw the away kit and the third kit, the Boilermaker kit last season, you can see the thought that went into them. So I'm looking forward to see what additions we have for next season. Head over to Hull KR Shirts with Mikey Carter for a bit more of an in-depth analysis of the shirt. Really interesting to get his views. And also you can check out his shirt collection there. So a really useful tool. IMG, Graham, the proposals that have been put forward, of course, the RFL brought them in to give their thoughts and ideas on how they can rejuvenate the game. They did a huge survey. I think 18,000 people, including all key stakeholders in the game, contributed to it. I must say that when I saw the proposals, I was a little bit underwhelmed. Underwhelmed in the fact that the RFL have brought in a company to put their stamp on the game and their ideas, and they look very much like ideas that the governing body should be coming up with it on their own. And I think that's what disappointed, really. The key points were a return to a license system, so the potential to remove relegation and promotion. Clubs would be granted a Grade A or Grade B license. The removal of Magic Weekend as a concept. Trying to realign the international calendar to bring in more international fixtures. It just seemed a bit bland, really, Graham.
Yeah, and I think it's. I mean, first and foremost, it's a 12-year deal they've got, isn't it? To read. So that's a long-term issue for me. So I think if they came in and absolutely ripped the game apart and sold as a new product, and we had to do it. I think there'd be an absolute uproar. So I'd like to think it's more about longevity for everybody in terms of the way that the structuring the licenses, for want of a better phrase, to deliver that sustainability for the clubs, allow for investment to come into the clubs where it's much needed. It's not a rich sport, isn't rugby league, so allowing clubs to be masters of their own destiny. And I think some of the things reading through the headline bits are around that we as fans, we want to see. We don't necessarily see it as our priority as a pure fan, but for the absolute longevity of the game, it's absolutely essential that those opportunities are in there. I think some of the tweaks have been based on feedback, and I think I don't think they've come out and explicitly said it, but player welfare has to be mentioned as well in terms of what we ask, or what is asked of the players nowadays, and the number of games and managing them. And we've seen it ourselves with injuries last season, and with all the concussion knocks, etc. Player welfare has to be thought through as well. I think one of the interesting bits for me, and I don't know whether it was just my perception of it, and it'd be interesting to get your thoughts, are that they pushed it out to a lot of fans, and it was heavily marketed to say, give us your views. And then the closing date happened, and there was a very, very quick turnaround to the results being published. And I just didn't know whether that was really an exercise that was already done and dusted, and it was just more of a tokenistic gesture that the fans had their say, but really we've only had a few days to analyse the results. And if there were that many replies or communications from fans, surely it took quite a long, a lot of time to analyse those and factor those into some of the proposals. But the actual report came out quite quickly afterward, and I just wonder if a lot of it was decided with the custodians of the game, the club chairmen, the CEOs, etc. And this was more of we've consulted the fans, and this, we've done it as an exercise rather than it be a building block of real, catalyst for change that we're looking for. So, but as you can imagine, with all those replies, you'll get some absolute head the balls who'll come up with some ridiculous solutions in there that are not worth considering anyway. So yeah, I just didn't know whether that was just me. I don't know whether you had any thoughts on that.
I think the one thing that rugby league really lacks is the voice of supporters. So if you look at football, obviously you have the Football Supporters Federation, which then incorporates supporters group from all the clubs in the country, etc. So there's an opportunity there for the governing body to liaise with a representative of the fans in football. Rugby league doesn't have that. So when you put out a survey and you get 18,000 responses, etc., you got such a varied range of opinions and views and ideas that it's very hard to then put that into any kind of real outcome, isn't it? Because you've got, like you said, you've got such a variation there. So I think going forward, there needs to be some kind of representation of the supporters. The players have got the sort of the players' union who can put across their opinions. The clubs have got their opportunity, but fans seem to be the ones who are told what's going to happen, rather than the ones who are helping steer where the game's going. And I agree with you. I think it's pretty much already been, the proposals were already sort of on the paper before this survey was put out. What do you think about some of the...
Just before that, John, just jumping back to that point, if we're talking about fans having voices, is it like you as a member of your community and your MP represents you at the Houses of Parliament? Now, we might live next door and the same MP might represent us both, but as I might have an opinion that's contrary to yours, how does that MP represent our opinion at that? And is it that same scenario where if you had fans and a representative of the fans, would there be so many fans who would be wanting the Magic Weekend and so many fans who don't want the Magic Weekend? Would there be so many who want the loop fixtures and who don't want the loop fixtures, who want promotion, relegation? So again, I think it's really difficult to get one voice for the club when there's we get 7,000 as a home game. If you take that 7,000 opinions and try and put it as one voice from the club, I think it's really difficult to do that.
Yeah, But at some point, there needs to be an avenue for support. So whether it's one person, one group as a representative, or whether it's that one person who's tasked with collating the views to then take forward, I just think that the supporters are often left behind when it comes to these key decisions and these key ideas, etc. And for me, the clubs in rugby league, especially the lower league clubs, have too much say on what's happening with the top end of the game. So these proposals are going to get voted on by the Super League, Championship and League One clubs. So in theory, West Wales Raiders have the same voting power of Hull Kingston Rovers. When we're talking about, and this is what disappointed me about the IMG proposals, is that for me, there needed to be much more focus on how we're going to improve the top tier, which really drives the funding, which brings in the money. How are we going to improve that so that we can cascade it down the game? Whereas at the moment, a licensing system, etc., are York going to be in favour of it if they know that they're forever going to be a B licensed side and they're never going to be able to achieve it? So I think for me, the how the voting system works probably needs changing, because in theory, 12 Super League teams can be outvoted now by the rest of the RFL and the rest of the clubs on these proposals, etc. And don't quite sit right with me when it's the Super League clubs or the Super League as an entity, which is really bringing in the funding for the game.
Yeah, that's a fair point. No, I would agree with that as well.
Yeah, a bit. And if we move on, 𝗷𝗵𝗿𝗁𝗍, Eddie Hemmings not really covering themselves in glory at the moment with their comments. Eddie Hemmings questioning whether, I think it was Dominion, was it, whether he's a really English player or not, and 𝗷𝗵𝗿𝗁𝗍 with his comments about the Fijians, whether they haven't been arrested yet, and it's just in the build up to a World Cup, it's a bit crass, isn't it? And it's a bit just not needed, especially the Eddie Hemmings one when he's interviewing the England head coach.
Yeah, it's poor form, and I think it's talking about the game in the wrong way. It's a World Cup event. You want to be talking about the building up to the fixtures. We're just getting to that point now of getting ready, and you don't want to be talking about poor taste remarks like that. I think there's obviously no place for it, and you would expect experienced people in the game to probably know a bit better than they've shown themselves up to there.
Yeah, I think probably time to put out to pasture now. And good night, Vienna. Very quickly, we've got a couple of minutes left, Graham. The Rugby League World Cup, you looking forward to it?
Yeah, I think it's a nice little interlude between the end of the season and the start of the new season. It's just a nice way of bridging that gap. There's obviously England Knights action as well, which you mentioned around tomorrow. I'm almost watching through one eye, just hoping that Jez and Mikey don't get any knocks tomorrow, that put them back from having a great season with us, and likewise with Kingy, Frankie Halton, Lewis Senior, etc. That the ones that are representing their countries, absolutely brilliant for them to have that honour of being at a World Cup with their country, and especially Kingy being captain of Ireland as well. What an honour that is. I just hope that they all represent themselves, the club, and I guess many Rovers fans will have Ireland down as a bit of a second team, perhaps, given the connections we've got there. And you just hope that they have a great tournament for themselves as a reward for the hard work they've put in this season. But please don't get injured, lads. Please don't come back with any knocks that are going to keep you out. And we want you back fully fit, fresh, and ready to go for us come February. Yeah,
and it is going to be very interesting to see how Willie Peters manages these returning players, whether they're going to get chucked straight into pre-season, whether they're going to get a bit of a break when they return, how he manages the game time at the start of the season, whether they're going to be phased in, because in reality, other than a couple of weeks, they won't have had much of a break at all from rugby league. And it's such a physical, demanding sport, especially players like George King, Sam Luckley. They're going to need a break because they're going to be really important in the engine room. Before we sign off, congratulations to 𝗕𝗵𝗿𝗁𝗍𝗂 recently got married. I know a few of the Rovers players are out for that. And Graham, thank you very much for joining us on the first pre-season mini pod. There's going to be hopefully on a weekly basis as things happen. You know, it's a club at the moment, Graham, where there's lots of things happening, isn't there?
It is, and we said at the back end of the season, well, that's it, we can damn tools for a few weeks now, it'll all go quiet, and nope, we've got a few pages of topic areas to cover, and yeah, so I think these will be good ways of chatting rugby league each week, and like I say, getting different thoughts and opinions of people. I'm sure as the weeks go by, there'll be other stuff that crops up as it usually does with Hull KR.
Yes, huge thank you to everybody who's tuning on YouTube, and if you're listening on podcast, thank you for tuning in and listening to this week's edition. The Red Robin Podcast pre-season mini-pod is powered by 360 Chartered Accountants and Budget Ties Auto Centre. And for now, live, love, laugh and be happy.